All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is North Point Geographic Solutions Geospatial Lunch and Learn for Q1 of 2022. Today, Cray is going to be sharing more about Integromat integration with AGOL. And with that, I will turn it over to Cray Freestone. He is one of our GIS web application developers here at North Point.
All right. Hello, everyone. As Heidi said, I'm Cray Freestone. If anyone has any follow-up questions for this presentation or wants these slides for the presentations, you can email me at this email address below. And with that, we will get started. So today, I'll be going through a quick introduction for how to use Integromat with your ArcGIS online account or through Survey123. There's quite a few different ways you can use it, and today's presentation will be scratching the surface because Integromat can do a lot of cool things. So go to the next slide. So Integromat is a no-code solution that lets you access the power of webhooks and automations and connectors. And so you can add all these connectors in, say from Survey123, you can listen to triggers with that connector. And once those triggers happen, you can perform actions. So Survey123 can listen for a new survey coming in, and then based off the data from that survey, it can perform an action like send an email to somebody or log that information into a Google Sheet, or even send out a QuickBooks invoice based off of any invoicing data that you might have in the survey, or even have in an ArcGIS Online table. So there's a lot of cool options. It's not originally built for GIS purposes. Esri just built in a Survey123 connector that makes it really easy for us to quickly harness the power of. So, and also something that I'll get to shortly is that originally when this event was created, this solution was called Integromat, but they recently rebranded and they are now called Make. So the, and I'll delve into that in more detail later. So to give a more visual idea of what Integromat looks like, for a non-GIS purpose, we can see that new email arrives, it gets logged in a sheet, Gmail goes through the attachments, uploads it to Dropbox, depending if it's documents only. If it's images only, it goes into Facebook. So you have not only just triggers and actions, you also have options for logic to go one way or the other, to iterate over data in there, to create zip files. So it is programmatic in nature, but it doesn't require any code, which is really nice if you want to quickly build some tools that can log information outside of ArcGIS Online, or say if you have a survey come in and it's an inspection and it has a high alert level for some value that went in there, you can then email somebody who might need to know that information. So as I said, Make, formerly Integromat, same company, they are rebranding to a new product. So if you do go on Integromat's website, you will probably see a pop-up like this. And it's actually incredibly similar. All of the same connectors that existed in the Integromat also exist in Make. I did not notice any difference between the two solutions. So if you come away from this presentation thinking, should I use Integromat, should I use Make? You may as well use Make because it's pretty much the same, and then it is what they're going to be pushing people towards. On the note of switching over to Make, if you are already using an Integromat, Integromat will stop being supported at the end of 2023. It will still be around as their legacy product. It will still continue to work, but if something goes wrong, you don't have access to their support. It, again, has the same functionality, so you may as well go to Make. And switching over, if you have a bunch of old scenarios, which we'll get to in Integromat, you can essentially sign into Integromat, go to Make's website, and they'll basically say, do you want to transfer over your data? You say yes, and it transfers it all over. So they make it pretty painless. Given all that, let's just go into the demo. Oh, and before that, this is sort of what it looks like. Left side is what Make looks like. Right side is what Integromat looked like. As you can see, pretty similar options here, except one is purple. So I'm going to exit out of here. And I'm going to go to Make. So assuming the first time you log into Make, you'll see your dashboard, which will not have a lot of data on it. Any active scenarios that you have. On your left side, you'll see some more information. The main thing you'll want to be, the main place that you'll be going inside of Make is scenarios. This is where you get all of those connectors set up and listen for triggers and actions. So I have a few here, and I am actually just going to create a new scenario so we can do one from scratch. So I went over to create a scenario, and over here, I'm just going to click this plus button to get started. And I'm going to, let's see here, quick stop my video just because so my computer will run a little bit faster. Everyone can still see my screen all right? I assume.
Yes, we can. Yep, looks good.
Okay, very good. So I have a lot of options. There's a lot of different companies that have set up connectors through Make/Integromat. I am just going to search for survey123. Click that. I have two options. So it can watch for a survey. That is the only trigger it has available, and the only action it has available is create report. So if anyone is familiar with Survey123 reports, you can send out, after a survey is completed, you can create basically Word document templates that will create PDFs that you can then send people, puts your surveys in a nice format. But today we're just going to look at watch survey. So this is our trigger. It's going to ask us what is the hook, where can we get this information from for what is triggering this. I'm just going to go over and click add. And it will prompt you to log into ArcGIS Online. I have already done that ahead of time. And since it can pull from my ArcGIS Online account, it will pull up all my Survey123 items. I created one earlier called Park Issues. And so you can listen for trigger events for add data and edit data. In this case, I'm going to do add data. There's a few more advanced things that you can put in here, such as Survey123 will send over a lot of data. So if you don't want portal info or user info, you can just say, no, don't include this information. So I'm just going to keep all that advanced information the way that it already was. So I'll just click save. And click. It just needs to process. I'll click OK. And now that we are listening for something, it should do something. So I'm just going to search for Gmail and show up there. We have a lot of options for Gmail. But the one I'm interested in is send an email. I already have a connection in here, but if you weren't already logged in to your Gmail through Make, you can go to add, go through that login process, and then your connection would be in here. add recipient, I'm just going to add my email in there, subject, just because this is for a test. I'm going to just do survey sent, click OK. I'm going to save it. And then just to test out that my scenario is working all right, I'm going to click run once. And I have my survey over in another window, which I'll bring it over. And there we go. So I created the Survey123 form in a pretty basic, only text input. Just imagining, say this is a citizen input form. They went to a park, they saw an issue, they want to let the local government know about that issue. So I'm just going to type in my name, make up a park name, and say there's overflowing trash. Now, once I submit this, it should trigger in Make, and I should see an email sent to my inbox. So we see that it went through. I can inspect what happened. I didn't actually send any information from Survey123 in there yet, but if I go into this one, I should be able to see that there was under survey info, I can see the form title, and then I believe under the feature attributes, I should be able to see the actual data that came through, including even the object ID and global ID. So I'm going to go into my email. I'll bring that up. And we can see that the survey was sent. But obviously we want to do actually send the information over. So the reason I first run it without putting any information is because the data Make doesn't figure out the data format that comes through until it actually comes through once, and then you have access to it. So here I'm going to put, now I get all the Survey123 information in here. So I don't really need a lot of this information except for the attributes down here. So feature attributes. So now I can say maybe park issue, put the, I can just call it park issue. For the content, I can simply just put complainant name. This accepts HTML, so you can use HTML to format it. So I'm just going to put in a little break in there. Park name, click the park name, put in another break, and then issue, and I'll click the park issue, and that will all go there. So I'll click save. Again, to test it, I will just get that going. I'll refresh my I'll just do the same information. Sometime, you know, park over trash. And we see email come through. So we see a new park issue, who the complainant was, what the park name was, and what the issue is. So this is a obviously pretty basic example. You could do a lot more stuff than this, but it gives you a good idea of what this is capable of. Say if your organization really likes your data in Excel sheets or Google Sheets and you want to log all the data that way, maybe it makes it easier for someone in your organization to view the data that way. You could put this all into a Google Sheet. If you needed to know, you could put filter statements in here. So you could say if the park issue is equal to overflowing trash, then you need to notify someone within your organization specifically. So this could be useful if the user was actually using it from a dropdown. Then it could have a predetermined amount of locations it could go. So you can filter those. You could route it in different directions and have the emails go in different directions. So you have some flow control options here. You can drag in a router, and I believe you have to disconnect these first. But the idea of the router is that you could have an email shooting out from here, an email shooting out from here, and depending on the value, it will go in different directions. And next, I wanted to show outside of Survey123 how you can still use Integromat to watch your ArcGIS online data. So you're not just stuck with Survey123. So I'm going to go back to my scenarios. I'm going to ask, I want to save changes. I'm just going to discard it. And I'm going to go over to this example called schedule and email. Another thing that I didn't mention in that last example is I was clicking run once just for testing purposes. It does exactly what it'll say. It will run once. And when it does, it will no longer be listening for anything. You can turn scheduling on, and you can have it run as soon as data comes in. You can have it run at regular intervals. So that could be helpful if there's a predetermined process that just needs to happen. But for the most part, you usually have it immediately running as data arrives, especially for Survey123. So the second example is just to get the wheels turning is for how you can trigger this from ArcGIS Online. So ArcGIS Online has a really cool feature called ArcGIS Notebooks. It allows you to execute Python code directly in ArcGIS Online. You don't have to store it anywhere. You don't have to write code locally and then schedule it with, say, a Windows task scheduler and have it run every day, which would require you to have some computer on all the time. This one lets you store code, lets you create tasks so that you could go and say, run this every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, every 3 months, what have you. I'm not going to go over the tasks right now, but if there is ever data you needed to look to in ArcGIS Online and need to monitor, so for example, you could have a list of projects that you need to do, and as soon as a project has gone from not scheduled to scheduled, you want to invoice the client, you want to send an email out to the client that an inspector is coming over on a certain date, and then you want to, say, log it in a Google spreadsheet. You could trigger that all from here. Sadly, the rest of ArcGIS Online doesn't act like Survey123 does. You can't just watch for the rest of ArcGIS Online like you can for Survey123. There's nothing in Make that has a connector specifically for ArcGIS Online. So to sort of get around that and to monitor, you would want to have something that is periodically running on ArcGIS Online to set a trigger. Now, luckily, Make has a connector called a webhook, which is essentially using the same technology that Survey123 is using. You can create a webhook. It will provide you with a URL. And with that URL, if you send a request to that URL, it will trigger your scenarios. So in this example scenario, this webhook is listening for a request. When it gets one, it's going to create an event on my Google Calendar to tell me when the project is happening, so I'm aware of it. It's going to send a response back, which isn't very relevant for the purpose of this talk. And then it's going to send me an email just letting me know that a project came in. So pretty simple script here to get things going. So I first just need to import the request library in Python. I'm going to set the webhook URL to the one that Integromat, that Make gave me. So that's the URL that I got from over here. The payload is what I'm going to be sending in my request over to Integromat. So this is just some sample data. So the project name is sample project, and the due date is the 24th of March. And then I'm just gonna make the request. So all that is request.post, put the URL in there, put the payload in there, and I'm going to click run once. Press enter on that one. Got a 200 response, which is good. And it went through the entire scenario. So now if I go into my Google Calendar, I should see that sample project is in there. And I guess just to prove that that wasn't already there before, I'll just run it one more time, just to show that it can actually do that. And it can parse out this date just fine. So I'm going to press enter and give it a little refresh. And we can see the sample projects on there. Assuming you have other people's emails, you can assign it and put it on specific calendars. If you don't want it on your calendar, you can put in descriptions. There's a lot you can do there. And then I should have also gotten an email notifying me about this sample project. So go into that. And once it has loaded, you should see new project, puts the project name in there, which is what came from ArcGIS Online. And then you see the project is scheduled on here. So that's a quick rundown of how to use Make/Integromat. Want to again emphasize, if you do decide to just use Integromat after this, totally fine. All the workflows I showed here should work there and vice versa. So I guess we can open things up to Q&A if anyone has any specific questions. Or if people are still rocking back in their chairs, I get it.
If you have any questions and you want to unmute yourself or throw them in the chat, otherwise I'll put Cray's email address into the chat as well. So if you think of something later and want to email him, you can do that too.
Hey, Cray, do you have to make a new account for Make, or you said you were able to just move all the data over?
Yeah, it says you need to create a new account, but it might create a new account for you on Make. What I ended up doing was logging into my Integromat account, then going over to Make's website, and then it just said, do you want to, it said something to the effect of, I see you're logged into Integromat, would you like to transfer over to Make? And then it created a new account for me. So as long as you have Integromat already, it should be a pretty easy switch. But if you don't, then yeah, you'll have to create a new Make account. I see Jesse's asking if you can use Integromat with custom API, or do you have to use connectors that they provide? You can use your own custom API. So I believe in the presentation I was showing that you can create custom webhooks that can listen. You can also utilize their I believe it's called their HTTP connector to make your own GET and POST requests to make on your own custom APIs.
Great. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, and we're coming up on the half hour. So we really appreciate you all taking the time to jump on today and join us for your lunch hour. And we will make sure the recording gets sent out to the email address you put into Eventbrite. And we hope you have a good day, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Geospatial Lunch and Learn. Thank you.